Good morning, my name is Doug Smith and welcome to another edition of Portsmouth This Week. This is the 1 March edition. My special guest today is Portsmouth Town Planner Gary Crosby. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to try to get to the heavy issue of the Portsmouth Cesspool, or the Rhode Island Cesspool Act of 2007, and how that may affect people in Portsmouth. Let me start with the act itself. What exactly is it?
Well, thanks for having me on. I wanted to come on today to talk about this a little bit. I've been getting a lot of telephone calls from people. There's a lot of confusion about what this is. The Rhode Island, and hopefully I can clear some of that up, the Rhode Island Cesspool Act of 2007, Rule 53 of DEM's Septic Systems Rules and Regulations basically says cesspools are considered to be a substandard wastewater treatment facility and must be removed if within 200 feet of the inland edge of a shoreline, coastal feature, public drinking water well, or a surface drinking water supply. And they have to be removed by January 1, 2014. That's the act in a nutshell. Now, in the past, I remember this has come up in front of the General Assembly a number of times prior to 2007, and they ultimately, it started out as all cesspools throughout the state, and ultimately there was a compromise, and finally the act passed. It had been presented to the General Assembly a number of times. Finally it passed in 2007 with this 200-foot buffer. So it's basically all cesspools within 200 feet of shore or drinking water well or surface water supply have to be removed. Okay,
and they essentially gave, what, 7 years for people to comply with that?
Well, yes, they did. Now, Portsmouth is the last community in the state where this act is being implemented. Westerly got their letters a year ago or more. But DEM has been waiting and waiting. As you know, we're in a dispute with them about whether we should install sewers or not, and they've been waiting and waiting and waiting to implement state law in our community, hoping that we would resolve this problem. And finally, they called me up and they said, you know, Gary, we can't wait any longer. We're going to have to do something. I heard a lot of grumbling about them sending out these letters at Christmas time and how could they and so forth. But the fact is, they called and they just said, we can't wait. It's not fair to the citizens of Portsmouth for us to wait any longer. The deadline is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. It's 10 months now.
So they're waiting for the town essentially to come up with our own solution.
Exactly, and we haven't, and so they're implementing state law in our community.
Now, who's subject to this act, and how many residences are in Portsmouth, for example, are affected by this?
There are anyone who has a cesspool within 200 feet of shore is subject to the act. They sent out 471 letters to Portsmouth residents. Now, DEM, at the time they were trying to work out the details of how they're going to implement this law. Their records go back to 1970. They started keeping records in 1970. So they don't know now who has cesspools. There's no inventory of cesspools. What they did was they just went around the coastline. First of all, they had to determine what the coastal feature was, what that line was, which was not an easy thing to do, but they then went around all the coasts of Rhode Island and picked out any property that was within that 200 foot.
That's 200 feet from the water.
200 feet from that coastal feature. Then they went into their records and tried to see if there was any record of a septic system, a certificate of compliance, or any kind of records if they found records that they took that out of the selection set. So ultimately, they sent out letters to 471 homeowners in Portsmouth.
That's quite a large part of the population.
It is.
Actually.
It is. Yeah.
Now they're giving them until January 2014?
That's correct, yeah.
And I think you already kind of answered the question of why they're giving Portsmouth homeowners so little time. That's because the law has been in place for 7 years.
Yes, it has been in place for 7 years. They took a couple of years to try and figure out how they were going to do all this and implement all this, and then they began, and as I said, our community was the very last one in the state
Now, how have homeowners been notified of need to comply with this?
Certified mail. They have, and the packet includes the letter telling you what you should do, and some other forms that have to be filled out and explaining just what's going on. But it was by certified mail. They sent me a list of all the people that they had sent the letters to, so I have the addresses. And
now, like you say, the DEM didn't have a complete list, or their records go back to 1970. Did we have any town list of cesspools?
No, we don't have any. We do not. DEM is completely in charge of permitting.
So they essentially have the best list there is.
Yeah, essentially, in our records, all we ever get is a copy of a certificate of conformance when a system is put in, and we keep those in our records. But we have no inventory of. Yeah. We've gone back and we've looked and made big assumptions that if there's nothing in the file, then we assume that there is a cesspool, or it's or it's a very old septic system in need of repair. And we got some numbers like that, but no specific inventory.
Okay, now the people who receive these letters, the 471 houses in Portsmouth, what do they need to do to comply with the law?
Well, they need to, what DEM has said to them, there's a form along with the letter. DEM has said, we don't know whether you're subject to the law or not. Here's an opportunity. The form, there's a form to fill out that says, and you can check a box that says, I do not have a cesspool, or you can check a box that says, my cesspool is more than 200 feet from the shore, and you have to provide documentation to that. In fact, there's a where you can self-certify in there. Write a sketch, write a narrative, tell them what you have. We've had a number of people who have come into town to get copies of whatever is in our files, so that they can demonstrate that they don't have a cesspool or whatever. So that's and DEM is asking people. Well, they're requiring people to fill out that form and send it back in, to either demonstrate that you're not subject to the law or acknowledge that you are.
Now, the deadline to do this is 1 January?
That's correct. That's correct.
2014.
That's right.
Are there any extensions?
Well, the deadline to replace the system is January 1, 2014.
So is there a deadline or any kind of thing to the...
They said 90 days, and the letter that I have dated is, I had a letter dated in December, so I think the deadline is coming up soon.
At the end of the month would be probably about right.
Now, DEM is not concerned about going out and trying to find people who don't respond to the letter. They don't have the manpower to do so. If somebody wants to just not respond to the letter, DEM's not going to come knocking on your door. But as of January 1, 2014, and if you have a cesspool and you are subject to the act and you haven't responded, then you will be subject to compliance orders and administrative penalties.
Now, people who refuse to do anything then would be essentially in violation of the law.
Yes, that's right.
And could be prosecuted down the road, like you say.
Yes, and this is state law. This has nothing to do with the town. This is state law, and then they have this list of 471 people that they've sent letters out to, and they're going to find out what's happening with each one of those properties. And if after January 1, 2014, if you haven't responded, they're not going to worry about that. But if you haven't, if you have a cesspool and it's within 200 feet of the shore after that date, it's trouble.
So the onus is on the individual house owner.
Correct.
To either respond to claiming that they don't have a cesspool, or to take action and replace it with, with a septic system.
That's right.
Is there any kind of town help for people who have received a notice? And for example, is there any financial assistance available? I know that these septic slant individual sewer systems, whatever you want to call it, are fairly expensive.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of help available for that?
There is. Let me back up for just 1 second. Of the 471, I talked with DEM just last week, and of the 471, they have received 191 responses, about 40%, which is kind of alarming to me. But you know, I'm just a of those, 33 are beyond the people. 33 people have been able to demonstrate that their cesspool is beyond the 200-foot zone. 78 have been able to demonstrate that they're not served by a cesspool. That leaves 80 or so. 58 or a number of those people have been able to demonstrate that it has been replaced, and so. As of whenever he gave me those numbers, there were 58 cesspools that people had acknowledged that they are subject to the law and they'll have to replace them. Now that leaves 280 people that haven't responded.
At all,
and
yeah.
DEM is going to regard anybody who doesn't respond as having a cesspool, and that they will investigate.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I'm sort of alarmed at only the 40% response rate.
Could part of that be because maybe some of the houses are summer homes or something?
Could be, yeah.
There's probably a lot of reasons, other reasons
Absolutely.
why, but
Absolutely.
it does seem like an awful lot of people, 60% have not responded.
Have not responded.
Yeah. Getting back to the other question about assistance, is there anything the town can do to help, or financial assistance, loans?
Not right now. No, there is not. We have there is no financial assistance program at the town level right now. Now we have, as I alluded to earlier, we've been responding to or trying to respond to the NOV. We've been in dispute with DEM about that, and we've hired a lawyer to help us with that, and his advice has been in the past to work on this Wastewater Management District ordinance and get it in place, but there is nothing in that ordinance that sets up any kind of a program for financial assistance. The only way, there is a state program, it's called the CISLIP program, Community Septic System Loan Program, and if the town qualifies for it, then the citizens can be available to avail themselves of these 2% loans. Now the first step in qualifying for the CISLIP loan program is to have an on-site wastewater management plan approved by DEM. We do not have that plan approved by DEM at this point, so I'm working on it. We have in the past we've been going in a very different direction, and just in the last couple of months we've decided that I'm going to pick up this idea of revising and updating and submitting an on-site wastewater management plan to DEM. So if that works, then we will qualify for a CISLIP, and there will be that 2% loan program. Now, in that plan, as I'm writing it now, I am also floating the idea of a local financial assistance program of some sort. It may be a bond that we take out, and then we can loan money to people and put a lien on their house if they don't, if they default or something like that. We the town, yeah. So there's lots of ways that sort of thing that could be configured, but I'm going to make sure that that's in this plan as we go forward.
You know, one of the problems might be, let's say we get a couple hundred homes that all of a sudden decide they really want to try to fix this thing by the end of the year. And there are only X amount of contractors that actually do that kind of work. Do we have any kind of a list of those kind of businesses or anything at the town hall that people might be able to refer to?
Well, we don't usually try and
know we don't want
make
to advertise
recommendations
yeah.
for specific, but there are septic installers here in town that can be, we certainly have a list of inspectors that people can use. I did talk with one of the pieces of advice that I have been giving people is, number one, please respond to the letter, that you know, you're just going to find yourself in trouble sooner or later if you don't respond. Secondly, I'm telling people to reach out to one of these installers and see, and I talked with one the other day who said that she's a civil engineer, septic designer, and she would be more than happy to come out and give people, you know, consultations on the size of the system that might be applicable to their property.
Yeah, this isn't somebody that the average homeowner would have on speed dial.
That's right. That's right. And then there are people out there. There are septic installers out there.
Now, you know, can you give us some time frame of when you think that a wastewater ordinance might be ready for the town council to approve?
Well, I have a pretty credible draft for it right now, but there's still quite a bit of work that I got to do, and I hope to have it to the council for their, you know, for them to cuss and discuss and approve by the end of this next month.
Okay.
There is a bit of urgency because I would very much like to get this, if it works,
in place, so
if it
people
works,
can get
you know,
loans,
if DEM approves this plan, then, you know, there is going to be some lag time in us qualifying for the CISLIP program as well.
Right.
But hopefully that, you know, all goes well, that there should be some
Right.
assistance by the end of the year.
Now, this ordinance, this wastewater ordinance, is going to be for all of the town.
This is not an ordinance. This is a plan. There's a
it's-
difference.
Okay, sorry.
We have, this is something that is not well understood, is that we have, for example, we have a comprehensive plan, we have a zoning ordinance. We have a stormwater plan, we have a stormwater ordinance. We have a, and in this case, this is a on-site wastewater management plan.
Right.
And within that plan, we will recommend that we establish an ordinance. Now, we do have a wastewater management district ordinance in place. It was adopted in 2010. It was part of our response to the NOV at the time. We got
NOV meaning notice of violation.
notice of violation, right, from DEM. That was the notice where they were requiring us to put in sewers, and our response was to get busy working on this ordinance, but we sort of put the cart before the horse, at least in my opinion, and that ordinance is in place now. Like I said, it doesn't have any financial assistance program in it, but it does have an inspection program, and it has an education component and some of those other things. But the plan, the ordinance won't do the trick itself. It's the plan that DEM wants to see.
Okay, so, and that's the one that you've been working on, you've got
Yes.
a draft of.
Yes.
Hopefully it'll go before the council in the next month or so.
Yes.
How is that plan, because that's a town-wide plan, how is that going to affect other people who don't have cesspools, septic systems?
It won't. It is a town-wide plan. It includes as the ordinance does that we have now, it includes an inspection component where in the plan we call out for having all on-site wastewater systems in the town of Portsmouth inspected in the next 7 years. That's 1,200 systems a year. It's pretty ambitious,
Right.
but that's the plan.
So the main requirement is to have your septic system inspected.
That's
then,
correct.
And how frequently would that have to be? Do you?
There's an
One initial one?
There's an initial baseline inspection, and then after that, based on how that inspection works out, then there will be a schedule after that. Maybe 3 years, or maybe 5 years, where another inspection
Right.
is needed.
Okay.
Maybe it's only voluntary. It just depends.
Right. A little bit of sewer 101, I guess. How does a septic system work? And how does it differ? How does a septic system differ from a cesspool?
A conventional septic system consists of a septic tank what's called a D box, and then a leach field. The septic tank is a sealed tank, it doesn't leak, and you have waste coming in from the house. Solids sink to the bottom as sludge and get dissolved by bacteria over time, and then there is a floating layer of scum, which is a floating layer. In between that floating layer and the sludge is this clear area of liquid. The effluent pipe takes that liquid in that clear area and goes out to the D box, which then distributes it to a leach field. And a leach field is basically a system for spreading it out and dosing it down into the ground. Now, most people don't understand where the treatment of effluent takes place in the soil below that leach field. In that 3 feet, DEM requires there be 3 feet of distance between the bottom of the leach field and the surface of the groundwater. And that's where all the work is done. That's where the treatment takes place. So that's in a nutshell, that's how a conventional septic system works. Now, a cesspool is essentially a hole in the ground lined by brick or stone with big gaps in between. Many of them don't have bottoms to them. So you have waste coming in from the house. The solids all go down to the bottom and leak out through the holes in the sides. And so, and even if there's 3 feet between the bottom of the cesspool, which I've seen many cesspools floating in the groundwater. There's no treatment. You have solids coming in contact with the soil, and the bacteria in the soil is supposed to do all this treatment, but it's just getting overloaded by the solids, and so there is no. It's not a cesspool is not a treatment system. It is a dispersal system. Okay,
now why do septic systems have to be pumped out?
Well, because of that sludge layer and that scum layer. As over time, that sludge layer, that clear area in between gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, and then ultimately the way conventional septic systems fail is that sludge or the scum layer gets over into the leach field and clogs the leach field, and then you don't have that dispersal anymore. So you have to, even a well-functioning septic system over time, you have to pump it.
Yeah, I can see where a cesspool though would just end up contaminating all the ground around it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just like I said, it's not a treatment system; it's a disposal system, and I have seen, I have stood there and watched a cesspool be pumped out, and immediately the groundwater is leaking back in. So you know that there's no treatment going on.
Yeah.
DEM regards them as a substandard wastewater treatment system, and they're requiring at least the ones within 200 feet to be removed.
Yeah, you made an interesting point earlier. You said that initially when they were working on the law, they were thinking about just banning all cesspools. Is there any chance that could happen in the future?
I don't know.
Or you think this is probably the best we can get around?
I think this is probably the best that we're going to be able to get. And frankly, the worst, the cesspools that are causing the worst kinds of problems are along the shore. So
those are the ones that are polluting.
Right, exactly. And one of the other things that is important about that is that it has a good deal to do with density of development as well.
Sure.
You know, we have these small lots, and we have there's a certain carrying capacity, if you will, for the soil. If you have a cesspool on a 20,000 square foot lot, it's not going to. You know, it's not good. Again, it's a substandard way of treating wastewater, but the density of development has everything to do with it as well.
Well, isn't that kind of what perk tests are for when they start
Yep.
You know, they're trying to see how much liquid the surrounding soil can absorb.
That's correct, and they design septic systems accordingly.
Well, I guess best case, let's say everybody ends up figuring out complying with this thing and building their own septic system, doing away with their cesspools. Going forward, can these really take the place of a larger municipal sewer system for the town?
Yes, I would say yes, but with a very big caveat, and that is that people maintain their systems and take responsibility for the maintenance of their systems and the health of their systems and making sure that their systems are doing proper wastewater treatment. That's what an on-site wastewater management plan is supposed to do, is manage that population of cesspool or of septic systems in town. And if we have people who ignore the fact that they have a septic system altogether, don't maintain it. You know, I have lots of people who say that we had a guy stand up in town council and proudly say that he's got a cesspool, he's never pumped it in 30 years, and works just fine. So I would answer your question by saying that a community of those kind of people, on-site wastewater treatment will not work.
Okay. The thing is, it doesn't seem we have a very effective enforcement or inspection system set up yet.
Well, that's correct. We have this wastewater management district ordinance that we have had in place, but we haven't done anything.
Yeah.
We sort of had this abortive attempt at starting the inspection program. But what I'm advocating is that if we get this on-site wastewater management plan in place and adopted by DEM, we're going to have to be aggressive and rigorous, or else it won't work.
Right. Well, thanks, Gary. I think this discussion obviously has a lot of implications for the comprehensive community plan, which I know you're going to start to work on, particularly the vision of what Portsmouth should be like in the future. Perhaps we can have you on to do another session when you start working on that plan.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The comprehensive plan is our plan for the future, and it involves infrastructure and community character and all of those issues. So I'd be
okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
See you next time.
In 1638, a group of religious dissenters from the Boston colony landed on the shores of an Indian settlement named Pocasset. Roger Williams convinced the settlers that they should go to Rhode Island instead of New Jersey. They signed the Portsmouth Compact and officially named the settlement Portsmouth. At noon on the 7th of March, a ceremony will be held at Town Hall to commemorate the signing of the Portsmouth Compact 375 years before. Come and see the original Town Compact document and listen to a short talk by historian Jim Garman. Join your friends and neighbors and help us all celebrate our 375th year. Visit www.portsmouthri375.com for more information.